Life can change in a single night. For Michael, that night came during his late taxi shift in Chicago. At 45, he was barely making ends meet, working 14-hour days to support his sick mother. His taxi was old, but it was all he had. On a cold December night at 2 a.m., he spotted a woman crying on a street corner. Many drivers would pass by, but Michael stopped. The woman had lost her wallet and phone. She needed to reach her dying father in a hospital 30 miles away. Michael knew helping her meant missing other paying customers during peak hours. He also knew his rent was due tomorrow. But seeing her tears, he made his choice. He turned off the meter and drove her to the hospital. 3 days later, Michael received a call that would transform his entire world. Sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness open doors we never knew existed. Hi everyone, welcome to Mystic Tales. Today, I'm excited to share a new story with you. Michael drove his old Toyota Camry through Chicago's empty streets. The night shift was always tough, but he needed every dollar he could earn. His mother's medical bills were piling up, and the taxi company's new commission rates were making it harder to break even. The dashboard clock showed 2:15 a.m. He had made only half of his usual earnings tonight. The cold December wind rattled his taxi's windows as he turned onto Michigan Avenue, hoping to catch some late-night passengers from the hotels. That's when he saw her. A woman in a black coat stood under a streetlight, her shoulders shaking as she wiped her eyes. Michael normally stayed cautious with late-night passengers, but something about her distress seemed genuine. He pulled up slowly and rolled down his window. "Are you okay, miss?" The woman looked up, her face streaked with tears. She was in her 30s, wearing business clothes under her coat. I lost my purse," she said, her voice trembling. "My phone and wallet, everything. Someone must have taken it at the restaurant." She paused to catch her breath. My father had a heart attack. He's at Lake Forest Hospital. I need to get there, but I have no money, no phone." Michael checked his fuel gauge. Lake Forest was a long drive north, and he had just enough gas to finish his shift. The woman hugged herself against the cold. "I understand if you can't help. I'll figure something out." He thought about his own mother in the hospital last year, how scared he had felt. The woman's eyes held the same fear. "Get in," he said, unlocking the doors. "I'll take you there." She slid into the back seat, thanking him repeatedly. Michael turned off his meter. "I'm Sarah," she said quietly. "I can find a way to pay you once we reach the hospital." "Don't worry about that now," Michael replied, taking the turn toward Lakeshore Drive. "I'm Michael. Let's get you to your father." As they drove north, Sarah told him about her father. He had been healthy until today, when he collapsed during dinner. Her sister was already at the hospital, but Sarah had been at a late business meeting when she got the news. The city lights faded behind them as Michael's taxi headed toward Lake Forest. He knew this meant no more fares tonight. His rent would be late again, but he kept thinking about his mother, about family, about doing what was right. The highway stretched empty before them, streetlights casting long shadows as his taxi carried them through the night, toward a hospital where the father waited, and toward a moment that would soon change everything. The hospital parking lot was quiet when Michael pulled up to the emergency entrance. Sarah rushed inside while Michael found a parking spot. He waited in his taxi, knowing his night was over. The fuel gauge flushed out and near empty, and he would barely make it back to the city. A soft tap on his window startled him. Sarah stood there, looking calmer. "My father is stable now," she said. "The doctors say he will recover. Would you like to come inside for some coffee? It's the least I can do." Michael hesitated, but accepted. The hospital cafeteria was nearly empty at this hour. Sarah bought them both coffee from the vending machine. My sister called our family lawyer. He's bringing my spare house keys and some cash. He should be here soon. They sat in the quiet cafeteria. Sarah worked in real estate development, she explained. Her father had always been healthy, active. I keep thinking about what would have happened if you hadn't stopped, she said. Most taxis passed me by. Michael wrapped his hands around the warm coffee cup. I understand what it's like. My mother had a stroke last year. Medical bills are tough, but family comes first. Sarah listened as Michael talked about his mother, how he had switched to night shifts to care for her during the day, how the taxi company's new policies made earning enough nearly impossible. His voice stayed steady, but his worry showed. The company keeps raising their commission rates, he explained. They take more, we earn less. Many good drivers are quitting, but starting over at my age isn't easy. A man in a suit entered the cafeteria carrying a small briefcase. Sarah waved him over. This is Tom, our family lawyer, she said. She turned to Tom. How's Dad doing? Resting now. The doctors are optimistic, Tom replied. He handed Sarah an envelope with her keys and some cash. Sarah immediately tried to pay Michael, but he shook his head. Please, she insisted. You've done so much. When Michael still refused, she asked for his phone number instead. Let me at least find a way to thank you properly. Michael wrote his number on a napkin, not expecting anything. He needed to head back before rush hour traffic began. As he walked to his taxi, Sarah called out, Michael, thank you, really. You'll hear from me soon. The drive back to Chicago was long and quiet. Michael thought about Sarah's father, about his own mother, about kindness and family, and doing the right thing. He didn't know it yet, but that number on the napkin would lead to a call that would change everything. 3 days passed. Michael continued his usual routine, driving longer hours to make up for that night's lost fares. His taxi's check engine light had started blinking, another worry to add to his growing list. His phone rang during his afternoon break. It was Sarah. Michael, I hope I'm not disturbing you. My father is doing much better. He's coming home tomorrow. Would you meet me for coffee? There's something I'd like to discuss. They agreed to meet at a small diner near the hospital. Michael found Sarah sitting at a corner table, dressed in business clothes. She looked different from that night, more composed. A folder lay on the table beside her coffee. I told my father about what you did, Sarah said, after they exchanged greetings, about how you helped me that night when I was stranded. He wanted to know more about you. She explained that her father owned several small businesses in Chicago. We've been looking to expand our transportation service division. We need someone who understands the industry from the ground up, someone who knows what drivers need. Michael listened, stirring his coffee slowly. Sarah opened the folder. We want to offer you a position managing our fleet operations, full benefits, including health insurance that would cover your mother. The offer was real, written on company letterhead. The salary was more than double what he made driving his taxi. Michael read it twice, making sure he understood everything. Well, me? He asked quietly. You don't really know me. Sarah smiled. That night you showed me exactly who you are. You turned off your meter to help a stranger. You were worried about your rent but still did the right thing. That's the kind of person we want on our team. She explained the role in detail. Michael would oversee their small fleet of corporate cars, manage the drivers, and help develop better policies. His experience as a taxi driver would be valuable in understanding what worked and what didn't. Take some time to think about it, Sarah said. We can start next month if you accept. Dad wants to meet you first, of course. Michael looked at the offer again. It wasn't a fortune, but it was a real chance. A way to help his mother. To have regular hours. To build something better. The position needs someone who cares about doing things right, Sarah continued. That night, you could have ignored me like others did. Instead, you showed kindness when I needed it most. Sometimes that's the best job interview possible. The meeting with Sarah's father took place in his office the following week. Robert, as he asked to be called, sat in a wheelchair beside his desk. He was a man in his 60s with kind eyes and a warm smile. Sarah told me everything about that night, Robert said, gesturing for Michael to sit. You know, I built this company from scratch 30 years ago. Started with 2 cars giving rides to business people. Now we have a fleet of 50 vehicles. Michael listened as Robert explained how the company had grown. They provided corporate transportation services to several major firms in Chicago. But Robert worried about maintaining quality as they expanded. Our drivers matter most, Robert said. They're the face of our company, but lately we've lost touch with what they need. That's where you come in. You've lived it. You understand both sides. They discussed Michael's experiences, the challenges drivers faced, ideas for improvement. Michael spoke honestly about driver safety, fair compensation, and maintaining vehicles properly. Robert nodded, taking notes. Sarah mentioned your mother's situation, Robert said gently. Our health insurance plan is excellent. She would be fully covered. We also offer paid time off for family care. The conversation shifted to practical matters. Michael would start with training, learning their systems. He would work directly with their current fleet manager for a month before taking over. We're not a huge corporation, Robert explained. We're a family business that grew. We want to keep that personal touch, that sense of caring about each person who works with us. Michael thought about his taxi, about the long nights, about his mother. This was a real chance, not a fairy tale ending, but an opportunity to build a better life through honest work. When can you start? Robert asked. I need 2 weeks, Michael replied. To properly finish with my taxi company, make sure my mother's care is arranged. Robert smiled. That's exactly the kind of responsibility I like to see. 2 weeks it is. As Michael stood to leave, Robert added, You know, that night you helped Sarah, you weren't just driving her to see me. You were showing her you are. In business, in life, character matters most. Michael walked out of the office building into the bright afternoon sun. His phone buzzed, a text from his mother asking how the meeting went. For the first time in years, he felt hope, not just for himself, but for their future. 6 months passed. Michael's office overlooked the company's parking lot where their fleet of cars gleamed in the morning sun. His old taxi days felt distant now, but he hadn't forgotten the lessons they taught him. His first changes as fleet manager were simple but important. He implemented regular maintenance schedules, improved the break room facilities, and created a fair system for shift assignments. The drivers appreciated having someone who understood their daily challenges. The customer satisfaction ratings are up 15%, Sarah mentioned during their weekly meeting. The drivers seem happier too. We've had 0 turnover since you started. Michael's mother was doing better. The company's health insurance covered her physical therapy, and his regular hours meant he could take her to appointments himself. She had even started volunteering at her local community center twice a week. One morning, Robert called Michael into his office. Remember how you told me about drivers needing better support during personal emergencies? Robert asked. I want you to develop a program for that. They worked together to create an emergency assistance fund for drivers. It would help with unexpected medical bills, car repairs, or family crises. Michael thought about that rainy night, about Sarah crying on the street corner, about choices and consequences. "We're expanding to Milwaukee next month," Robert said. "I want you to oversee both operations. It means a bigger role, more responsibility." Michael accepted the promotion with gratitude but also with confidence. He had earned this through hard work and dedication. The salary increase meant he could finally move his mother to a better apartment, closer to her doctors. That evening, as Michael drove home in his company car, he passed his old taxi stand. A young driver was helping an elderly woman with her groceries. Michael smiled, remembering countless similar moments from his driving days. His phone rang. It was his mother. "Don't forget dinner tonight," she said cheerfully. "Sarah and Robert are coming too." Over the months, they had become like family. Regular dinners, shared stories, genuine care for each other. Not because of obligation, but because sometimes life brings people together in unexpected ways. Michael parked outside his mother's new building. Inside, he could see her setting the table through the window. His life had changed, not through magic or miracle, but through a simple act of kindness that opened the door to opportunity. As he walked up the steps, Michael thought about that night 6 months ago. One decision, one moment of choosing compassion over convenience had led him here. Not to instant riches or fairy tale endings, but to something better, something real. A life built on kindness, hard work, and genuine connections. Loved this story? Tap that like button and subscribe to Mystic Tales for more. Let us know how this story made you feel with a single word in the comments.